No, I don't know. I don't know if I agree that protesters outside their house would really. I mean, they live in gated communities, man. I don't know if they'd really give a shit about that.
Well, tear down the gates.
But if you can affect their business, then you've got them.
Yeah, but yeah, it's about the money, and it's about the business, and it's about the people that run that business. And I think it's a sufficiently small number of people who are very used to high standards of living and have their motivations are sufficiently greedy that if you make it not profitable for people to engage in this business, then that would break down the war machine right then and there. And the problem with the current anti-war movement is that people are trying to approach the system head on. They're trying to say, okay, stop the war, talking to their congressperson and saying, hey, you should stop the war, and calling them up and writing them letters. Well, that's the front end of the machine. It's not its weakest link. It's not the part that controls it. And I think if there were going to be a successful movement, it should be honest about the mechanisms of what it opposes, rather than going against it in an idealized sort of way that, oh, if everybody just votes for other people, then we can stop the war. Well, yeah, but that's not how it works.
Yeah, because, I mean, just look at Barack Obama. You know, we had two choices, war or war.
True. I think that part of that being honest, though, about the strength of what we're opposing when we're opposing war, and the instruments of war too, because I think that needs to be part and parcel of it, is that we need to approach it as a jobs program, because that's the source of its appeal to its most vehement supporters. That's the way that it's argued for. Anything that makes munitions is a big factory which employs people. Any place that's a base is basically the center, usually, of the local economy. All these other businesses have grown up to rely on the regular income that they get from that base. So why shouldn't people be horrified at the notion that, the base is closing? Their interests are parochial. They do care about continuing their existence. So yeah, they're going to be upset about that base closing. They're going to be upset about that munitions plant closing. If you want to make people okay with these things, you have to show them a way that you can do this, where you will minimize or erase, better yet, the impact on their community. So you could say, this is gone, you will have this in its place, and everybody can sign on and say, that's as good, or at the very least, that is a good faith effort to correct the problem that we are willing to live with. And outside of that, you can expect 100% that people will be upset and will be absolutely oppositional. And it'll trump whatever ideology they have about war in general. When it comes down to, okay, I am opposed to war, but I've got to feed my fucking family. And that's the way people are going to be about it.
And you've got to be really creative if you want to find a way to actually hit these people economically, because, I mean, I can't organize a bomb boycott, okay? I'm not buying, weapons and...
That's it, House. If you would just stop, that would take care of the problem.
Sorry, guys, my bad.
These companies rely on credit to run, and so if we look at who are their creditors, and we write a letter to these, we go to the board meetings of these creditors, and they say, look, you are the major funding source behind this company that's doing all this bad stuff, and because of that, we're going to boycott you. Then, assuming we had enough money, then that could possibly create some influence, I guess. I don't know.
That could. Zach, to answer what you were saying about how you start closing munitions factories and people are going to get pissed off about the job losses. That's a really good point. But the thing is that, we've got we're always stockpiling weaponry, and that's part of the reason they're still open. And we're always working on new and more horrifying weapons. But I have a couple of responses to that. First off, developing new technology and then stockpiling those weapons is, means that there will always be jobs, obviously. And one way that I think that we could do that is to start, looking again at the way that our military works. Like if we started manufacturing, in addition to bombs and guns, what if we said, look, if we're going to go occupying other nations, maybe we should equip these guys with more, state-of-the-art advanced non-lethal weaponry, okay? And then we've got factories producing things that don't kill as many people, that we capture people instead, or that we really, if we're going to police the world, why don't we act like police instead of just a military killing machine? And in addition to that, we stockpile these bombs. Well, instead of blowing up the old bombs, why don't we start a new plant to disassemble and recycle them, and then we use the old plant to create the new, more advanced ones to replace them. If we want to spend a lot of money in the military and weapons stockpiling, and we want to preserve the jobs, well, instead of blowing them up and killing people and pissing people off all over the world, wouldn't that be a way to create more jobs rather than shutting them down? I don't know.
You'll have to get the defense contractors and the money interests on board with that, which is, is possible, I guess, if there's sufficient opposition to war popularly and you bail them out to the tune of a sufficient amount of money. But then you're getting into a situation analogous to the healthcare situation where we have the insurance companies basically saying, okay, well, you can do healthcare reform as long as you give us tons and tons of money.
Yeah, it's basically protection money for them.
Well, it might work.
To buy their silence,
But yeah, if it works, that's fine, I guess.
Well, it depends on, whether what you get is worth the bribes you're paying out. I mean, I think in the case of the healthcare, I think what we're getting is probably going to be very little compared to what we're giving away in bribes and concessions to the insurance companies, which I think is a good demonstration of the sort of retrograde forces that are sort of built into our system now, which I think maybe they were good at some point in the sense that they would slow down things when they were threatening to go out off the rails. But on the other hand, if it gets toxic, it's also got a certain staying power that way too, and it's hard to move back towards sanity.
I think that, obviously you start talking about, what needs to be changed, and then you start talking about how the lobbyists are going to oppose it. That's always the case. That's a fundamental problem that we have to find ways to get around. Okay. We can sit here and talk about reform. Any reform is going to be opposed by the lobbyists. But of course, we just have to make the general assumption that that's the obstacle we have to get around. It shouldn't stop us from talking about what we need to do to change things.
But I think there's kind of a larger problem, though, that undergirds that, and it allows it to continue to exist. And I think that is just a fundamental belief in the goodness, in the essential rightness of business and business models for solving problems.
Man, who still thinks that?
I think everybody. I think largely everybody. I think that's more of a common perception than it is not.
Maybe they're right. Maybe we're approaching this the wrong way, and maybe we're not framing the problem correctly. The problem isn't the whole war and all this stuff. The problem is that we personally aren't making any money off of it. So clearly, this is a problem that business can solve. Right? That a good business solves, I guess everybody just needs to start a business and then profiteer off of everything. And then we'll be fine.
Here's what I think actually part of the problem is as well. I think that it's a huge problem that we look at politics from the top down instead of from the bottom up. I mean, the president, okay, is the one public figure who receives the most attention from every individual in the country and the most scrutiny from every individual in the country, but is also the one political figure who every individual person in the country has the least sway over in terms of what percentage of the vote that they control.